Aussie Shooter here again, guys. Now, by now, most of you have already heard about the really soft sentence given to the bloke who king hit Thomas Kelly, and it's really it's unbelievable. You roll your eyes at some of these things. But anyway, a lot of people on radio are talking about the judiciary. They're talking about the government being, too soft. They're talking about, not enough things being done by the government to increase these sentences. Well, look, I'd like to talk about something that really no one's talking about, and I just don't understand why. Now, for those of you who know a little bit of history, you would know that Australia back in the 40s, 50s and 60s was a country where, mate, when you done crime and you done a lot of time, believe me, they'll hand out sentences of 20, 30 years and life in a lot of circumstances for crimes like this. And we used to actually be really, really tough on crime back in the past. So what's changed? Well, what's really changed is that the government no longer really want to pay for the incarceration of these crooks. So I feel there's a lot of pressure being put on to the judiciary by the government to make all these light sentences, because really the cost of incarceration these days for a crook is huge. It's a huge amount of money being involved here, and the government no longer want to pay. Why? Because they're running out of taxes that they can increase, and that's what it comes down to. So a lot of people are wanting this mandatory 5-year sentence for gun crime and all these things. You know what? I'll tell you right now, if these people looked at the bill for something like this, if they realized how many more new jails would have to be built to put these people away, then I don't think they'd be so keen on all this mandatory sentencing. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't believe that criminals should be put away for a long time. I do. However, the question needs to be asked, and no one's asking this question: why are good law-abiding citizens like me and yourself have to pay for the incarceration of scumbags? Why do we have to pay for it? No one's really asking this question. And I mean, the process is, okay, you commit a crime, and then you've got to pay for your legal costs. And if you can't pay for it, I think, the taxpayer foots the bill. And then after that, you get put in jail. And let's say, for example, you get a 2-year sentence. While you're in jail, you get 3 meals a day, you get TV, you get internet, all paid by the taxpayer. And then when you get out, if you had assets, I assume you still get to keep those assets. And I just don't understand. Why does the law-abiding citizen have to pay for the incarceration of arseholes? So that's the question that's not being asked in the media, and I don't believe it's right. And to be perfectly honest, for as long as the taxpayer has to pay for the incarceration of crooks, then you're going to be continuing to see light sentences, and that's just the cycle that we've created, unfortunately. So I believe the system needs to be completely revamped. I believe if you're a crook and you've done something wrong and you get a 4-year sentence, for example, and it costs $20,000 a year to house you in that prison, well, guess what? You've got to pay $80,000 as your debt to society on top of the time that you have to do for the crime. You've got to pay $80,000 for your sentence. So that's what it comes down to. And if you own a house and it's worth $300,000, well, guess what? You're going to have to sell your house, pay for the time of your sentence, and then you pocket your $220,000 back, and then you move on with your life. And that's how it should be. And people should also, I think, while they're in prison, be given the option to do hard labour, to work off their sentence. Why not? I can't see anything wrong with that. As long as you sign a waiver form stating that you can't sue the government or the taxpayer if you injure yourself, why can't people be given the option to do hard labour while they're in prison, to work off their sentence? Now, I know that wanting to make prisoners do hard labour has a certain stigma attached to it. Some people think it's draconian. Well, I don't believe so. I mean, the average person, the average free person out there who is not in the prison has to go out and usually work 8 to 10 hours a day and slug it out with the rest of the normal people to earn a crust, to survive in society. And I don't see why it should be any different for the prisoners. They should have to earn their way as well and repay their debt to society. And I don't understand why there's such a stigma attached to it. I mean, when you go to prison, it shouldn't be a holiday camp where you get to watch TV all day and surf the internet. So that's what I think about it, and I just don't understand why this idea would have any opposition. And if they don't want to do hard labour, fine, sell your assets, get your family to pay for it. The taxpayer should not be left holding the bag full of cost for your wrongdoing. And that's how I feel about it. Okay, there's a lot of poor people out there that have got nothing, and they become crooks. Fine. You know what? While they're in jail, they've got to pay their debt to society. Not just do the time. They've got to do the time for the crime, but they've got to pay their debt to society. And you know what? They shouldn't be given an option. They should have to do hard labour if they can't afford to pay for their incarceration any other way. Now, I strongly believe if the government started imposing these prison costs to the actual crooks and their families, I believe there's two major results that would occur from this. One, the judiciary would actually give out some proper sentences, and two, the government would save a lot of money and they would be free to deliver tax cuts to the rest of society, and these tax cuts would be much needed. At the same time too, you could get private industry involved, and I mean, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to buy an insurance policy for my 16-year-old son, for example, right? That basically covers him in case he ends up on the wrong side of the law and has to do time in jail. So my insurance policy would say, for example, cost me $1,000 a year, and if he gets in trouble, say, for example, for the ages of 16 to 26, if he gets in trouble, then if he's got to do time, well, guess what? My insurance policy will cover me for that time that he's done in jail. I can't see what's wrong with that. That way, the judiciary will no longer be under pressure by the government to install light sentences, because once the government no longer has to pay for the cost of incarceration, the judiciary will be, I believe, free to deliver proper justice and give these people the sentences they deserve. So that's the system I think we should have. But anyway, if you think I've missed something, if you think my logic is flawed, please feel free to tell me down here in the comments. But also, if you think it's a great idea, please say so as well. So anyway, Aussie Shooter signing out, guys. Always trying to make new ideas for freedom, for justice, and also creating a better country. So anyway, guys, Aussie Shooter signing out, and I'll catch you later. Now, the most hilarious part about all this is that the government do this already to a certain extent. But guess what? They don't do it to crooks. They do it to normal law-abiding people like yourself and myself. Yeah, that's right. And the people they do it most to is pensioners. See, if you're a pensioner, you can own your own house, but once you end up having one or two investment properties, guess what? You don't qualify for the pension, because the government basically tells you, hey, listen, we're not going to support you. Even though you've worked hard all your life for 50 years or so, you've contributed to society, you've paid your taxes. No, we're not going to support you. You have to sell your assets to support yourself first before you get the pension. So the government already do this, but they do it to law-abiding people. So why don't they do it to all the crooks? Why don't they do it to the scumbags who contribute nothing to society but end up just being a cost to society? Why don't they impose those costs on them?